So our conference again this week is completing the semester on the spine, and we've been studying three aspects of the spine: the anatomy of the spine, the pranic spine, Sushumna Nadi, as well as the emotional spine. And without too much review this morning, we've been looking at how to keep our spines healthy through movement, asana, creating length and space in the spine, using asanas for twisting as well, and then talking about moving the prana, the breath and the energy through Sushumna Nadi for our health, creating vibrant energy and also helping us calm down a little bit. And then we moved into the emotional spine, which is talking a little bit about how we hold things in our body and how this pranic practice and this body asana practice helps us release emotions and moves us into our mental health as well. So a couple weeks ago, we moved into specific studies on how we also need to work on strength in order to keep the spine and the back healthy. And again, I want you guys to think of these three sections we've been talking about all semester. I'm sort of a visual learner, so this week I'm sort of giving you something visual to look at. If you're taking notes, it would be a good way to sort of write your notes. As the anatomy, we talked about how important it is to strengthen the spine and the back. We looked at particular muscles, the erector spinae. We looked at the bandhas, contracting the perineal muscles and the lower abdominal muscles, holding the spine in place with strength, chaturanga, and a lot of different poses. And then we went from that aspect of strength in the anatomy last week to pranic strength. So the idea that really this is so much more than just gymnastics or a good workout at the gym. What makes Ashtanga and what makes yoga so unique is that it's a breath practice and a pranic practice. And without that, we really could say these asanas were just keeping us strong and flexible. But when you add the breath, this becomes this energy practice, this pranic practice. So last week, studying strength, we talked about how important it is that you have a strong ujjayi breath. And that the strength is actually what's going to create some health as well, because we're going to move that breath through the vayus. Do you guys remember last week what were the four main vayus that we look at, the four directions of the wind? Udana vayu, the throat; prana vayu, the chest; samana vayu, the digestive region system; and then lastly apana vayu, which is our elimination region and system. And how if we increase the intensity or strength of your breathing, that's how we're really going to cleanse and keep those aspects of our bodies healthy. So that was sort of the anatomy of the strength of prana from last week. So I talked a little bit last week about trying to give you guys some type of gauge in order to move into your strength. Because sometimes I think we forget about our breathing during our yoga practice, or we think we have a strong breath, but it's really not as strong as we think it is. So, so I gave you this idea of sort of a 5. So a strong ujjayi breath, which is our goal in every asana, in every vinyasa, should be a 5, sounding like this. Oftentimes we forget, maybe we're twisting or something, we're weak. It's more like a 1 or a 2, or it's choppy, or it's strong at the beginning and weak at the end. So as we master the practice, we master primary series, we try to master the breath in every vinyasa, in every asana, to be that 5. So we're constantly moving that place. So then taking that third aspect of the spine we're studying this week would be the emotional spine. And the thread that we're pulling through these last few weeks of strength is how we can use the strength of the pranic practice to create health in our emotional body, or our emotional selves or spiritual self. So if last week we were studying the vayus, what would we be studying this week in Sushumna Nadi that's going to create mental health? The chakras, right? So understanding the chakras for us is very much about your mental health. Sometimes you'll look at different texts and they really describe it as your spiritual health as well. It's our spiritual process. And the really great thing is, you guys know that my my history that I bring into my teaching comes from psychology. And so what I think is really wonderful is that all my years of psychology just really led me into my yoga practice and my yoga teaching to all of you, because it's such a foundational part of our practice that, again, oftentimes gets forgotten. But I was reading from Deskachar's, which is one of your 10 has to be in your yoga library books, The Heart of Yoga. I was reading that on Sunday, and I'm sorry I don't have time to read it today, but Deskachar talks about how when we are able to hold and lock in the prana, we create this health. And we see the diagram he showed on how the energetic arrows moving outside of the body. He talks about how that creates emotional problems for us. One of the things he describes as when we have energy leaking from the body, we're not able to hold it in. You might feel lethargic, you might feel depressed, you know, some issues that might come up from that particular problem with energy. But Deskachar really describes the more the yoga practitioner can use the bandhas and hold the prana in and move it throughout the body, that we also release tensions in the body. We're also able to focus our minds and bring our minds to more of a place of peace. All these benefits of the yoga practice. Then I went into a diagram which is an anatomy of the spirit, which is also one of the 10 books that you have to have in your yoga library. This is all about the pranic practice and really moves from the anatomy to the energy to your emotional health so beautifully. And she has a diagram in here as well where the energy comes in, and she refers to a problem with our mental health through the energy when it's draining from the body. So again, we think of sometimes what drains energy from the body is sometimes things like addictions, or being in unhealthy relationships, or being in an unhealthy job or situation where you're stressed all the time. These things actually drain energy from our physical body. And Carolyn Meese talks about as well how we need to lock it in, and the healthy person is able to hold their prana. So a lot of what we're going to be doing in our yoga practice today, as we always do, is locking the bandhas, like we talked about, is good for the anatomy, it's good for the vayus, the energy, but it also, for the yoga science, shows us that it's really good for our emotional health as well. I was describing my favorite class in graduate school was abnormal psychology, because it's just fun looking at all that kind of stuff that's out there. But I love the professor because he described mental health like this. He said it's a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum is vibrant, beautiful health. I'm eating well, I'm doing my yoga practice, I'm in healthy relationships, I love my job, I'm passionate, I have lots of energy. On the other end of the spectrum is nutty burgerness, right? And what I loved about him saying this, it wasn't like this person's crazy, this person's sane, or, you know, it's more like we're all on the spectrum somewhere. And it shifts. You know, there are times in my life where I'm so close to this end of the spectrum, feeling so good, feeling so healthy. And other times in my life where I'm stressed, or maybe a tragedy's happened for me and I move down towards nutty burger side a little bit. You know, and that's part of life. And so the thing that I want to say in conference today, which is so beautiful about the yoga practice, is how do we keep ourselves mentally healthy? I would ask myself as a counselor when I was working with other people, but we all ask ourselves this, you know. One day, you guys know, right? One day when you're not feeling healthy up here is not a good day, right? And I think sometimes we think of, oh, you know, I keep my body healthy because I eat right, and I do this and I do that. But equally for all of us, we must also consider, like, how do we keep ourselves vibrant and healthy in our spiritual practice or in our mind? And so, you know, there are times in our life where we might have a good therapist that we see. We might be reading good spiritual text or psychology books, going to the beach on a regular basis, getting out in nature. Like, what are the things that we do? One of the things that all of us do in this room is we practice yoga. That is one of the ways you know if you stop your yoga practice for a couple weeks or for months, you're like, not quite feeling the same vibrant health, you know. I'm fortunate to have a lot of beautiful friends that are still therapists and that also practice here. And oftentimes they refer their clients to us to come here as part of their health program, is to come in and do a yoga practice. So today I just want to remind all of you that one of the major ways that we're going to keep ourselves mentally healthy through our yoga is, again, through our breath and our ability to lock at the core and to really move this breath and let it use our spirits and our mental health as well to keep us vibrant and alive and at the same time calm and healthy. The quote this week for our teachings on working from within are from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. The place to improve the world is first in one's own heart and hands and head, and then work outward from there.